grace of heaven, the virtues of masters, grand predecessor, transmitters, and all of you guys for giving me the opportunity to share this topic today. So today's topic is on Predecessor Liu. He's one of the Buddhas that are in that small temple. It's the statue on the front and to the right. I've been here for about 20-something years now, and it wasn't until maybe like last year or this year that I started to spend more time to understand the foundation of our history of Tao. And, before that, I spent many years doing these bows to the Buddhas over there without thinking about who they really are and why we do that. And, it's kind of shameful on my part for not spending the time to really, understand the history of our Tao. So why we have to give him bows is because it's very important, is that our golden thread, which all of us in the same temple have the same golden thread. And the way it goes is, it's us, then our introducer and guarantor, then all the transmitters, transmitter Tui, and then predecessor, grand predecessor, then the 18th patriarch and matriarch, and then the 17th patriarch, and then God. So on our golden thread, he's one of the main leaders. Why we're able to sit here today is because of all these leaders who came before us. So this is Predecessor Liu. After he passed away, he was given the title of True Sage of Great Virtue. So today I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about some of the stories as to what made him so virtuous. A little bit of a brief timeline information. He was born in China in 1908. He received Tao in 1941. And then 6 years later, he left his home in China to propagate Tao in Taiwan. On the day that he left for Taiwan, his wife told his youngest son to hold onto his leg and beg him not to go because they knew that if he was going, then he'd be gone for a long time. He kind of tried to ease their worries and tell them, I'm just going to another city in China, I won't be long. But because communist China and Taiwan were fighting in a war, those who were in Taiwan were not able to return back to China for many, many years. So little did they know that was the last time that he and his family saw each other again. So now I'm going to talk about some of the stories that of what made him so virtuous. When he moved to Taiwan, the temple had no money, so him and transmitter Tui would go out and sell tofu bean curd every single day. In order to do that, they'd have to wake up at 3 a.m. every single day, go outside in the street to make the tofu, and then 6 a.m. they would go out, ride their bikes to go sell it. So when they were doing that, they didn't really have much money or anything to eat during those days that they were selling it, but they refused to eat any of the bean curd that they were selling because they knew that the money and the bean curd were, for the temple, for temple's profits. And so any money that they made, they would send immediately to the grand predecessor. And then another time, grand predecessor wrote a letter to predecessor saying that he was going to visit the south of Taiwan sometime that month. He didn't say when or how he would be coming, but predecessor would go to the train station every single day to wait for grand predecessor to come. Now, because he didn't know when he was coming or how he was coming, he would just wait there. But then grand predecessor ended up coming by car. So when he was going to the train station, he was not really waiting for anyone because no one was coming. But he was so virtuous that he would wait there for his elder to come so that he could greet him. Now, when the grand predecessor came by car, he didn't try to make excuses for not being able to greet him. He just kind of, took the scolding and he just felt really bad that he wasn't there to greet his elder. I think if it was us, we would try to explain ourselves, be like, oh, we tried our best, we went to the train station every day, but instead he just didn't tell anyone that he was waiting for him, but he was just very kind and selfless. Some of the other things that he did that I thought were very noble, he was willing to ride his bicycle 5 hours just to motivate the Tao members. For us, maybe even an hour seems like a drive would be too long, but he would ride his bicycle, in the heat and whatever to help, the Tao members understand why it's so important. And even though he was a transmitter, he would still offer the towels to people when they showed up. So nothing was, beneath him or he thought he treated everyone the same. And I think that's very kind and very selfless. Some of the other things he did was, when he went to go buy vegetables and cook them for the Tao members, he would cook only the good parts of the vegetables and then give that to the Tao members, and he would save all the bad parts for himself. And when he saw, some of the Tao members, when they would cook, they would, chop off the ends of the vegetables that weren't, they don't think it tastes good, and he would see them throw it away. But instead, he wouldn't say anything. He would wait until they were done, pick it out of the garbage, wash it, and then eat it himself. The reason he did this was because he was worried that we would get the bad credit, the bad karma that comes with wasting. So he was trying to carry some of that burden for us. Eventually, he ended up getting very sick, and he developed a tumor. But when he was in pain and it was, getting worse, he never complained, and he never showed his pain, because he was afraid to worry or burden the Tao members because they all cared about him so much. Eventually he passed away, and less than 100 days after he passed, Holy Teacher brought Predecessor to come do a sandwriting reunion with us. And because it was so, sudden, I guess, they didn't really plan for the sandwriting reunion, that he felt bad that the grand predecessor didn't know about it. So when he was channeling, he kneeled down in front of the grand predecessor and asked for his permission to continue. So, he's already a Buddha in heaven, and he came back because Holy Teacher brought him. So he already has heaven's mandate to come talk, but because he so, revered the grand predecessor and was so, very good on the rules and regulations of the temple, even after he became a Buddha, he still kneeled down in front of, a human and, asked for his permission to continue, which I think shows a lot of his virtue. And then after the grand predecessor said yes, the predecessor additionally did another 100 bows and was crying with appreciation to his grand predecessor. So even after he passed away, he still went out of his way to show the respect and, reverence to his grand predecessor, like the person who came before him. So I think there's a lot here in these stories that can, show us the way to do the same thing and revere our elders as well. Now, when he came to Taiwan, it wasn't all easy, right? Because there was so many hardships that he faced. He left his family, to propagate Tao so that we could all sit here and, get to cultivate together. He left his family. He was also actually captured and tortured by the Chinese government when they found out that he was part of the Tao. They actually they hung him upside down and then poured hot chili pepper water on him. So then eventually, because of this, he developed a lung disease. And they were trying to get the three treasures and all the names of the people that were cultivating. But he, kind of sacrificed himself and said, I'm not going to say anything. And he tried to protect all the people that were members of the Tao at the time. So I think, there's a lot of tests for him to see how sincere he was, because he had so many hardships. But he was willing to do so much for the Tao. And people sometimes ask, why did he have so many hardships and, sicknesses when he is so virtuous and kind? He had a tumor, and, they asked why that happened. And it was because he ended up uplifting his teacher and taking on all the bad credits of his teacher. And it turned out his teacher had once killed a dog that was pregnant with 9 puppies. So that was 10 lives that the teacher owed, and he took on that burden. And in general, we're not supposed to uplift people other than our parents, because that shows filial piety. So for him to be able to do that, it takes a lot of merit. And in doing so, he ended up taking a lot of the bad karma. Additionally, another reason why he faced so many hardships was because he tried to take on the burden of all his Tao members' bad credits and karmas. He would often do, repentance forms and stuff like that to help take some of our bad karma away for us. Eventually, his wife passed away and also came back and did a sandwriting reunion. And I thought, when I read this, it was actually very touching. She kind of explained how she saw things after the predecessor left. After he had left, she said his family encountered many, many hardships. Eventually, before he left, they were still pretty well off. They had money. They were doing pretty well. But then once he left, the whole family suffered many hardships. They had no money. They couldn't afford even white rice, which, in Chinese culture, that's the very basic, food you can provide your family. Eventually, his youngest son got very sick, and they had no money to see a doctor, and he died of malnutrition. Then she said, eventually, the daughter-in-law and grandson passed away too from also similar situations. Shortly after, the oldest son also passed away. So you can see how much hardship his wife had to face without him. She was the sole breadwinner of the family, and she wasn't able to provide as much as if he had stayed with them. His wife continued hoping and waiting for his return even into old age. And one day, one of the Tao members sent her a letter. When she opened it, it was the sandwriting reunion copy that a predecessor had come back and talked to everyone. And in order to do a sandwriting reunion, the one qualification is it means you passed away. So that's how she found out her husband died. So can you imagine a whole lifetime of waiting for your husband to return, and you find out he's already passed away too. Luckily, because of all their virtues and, selflessness, they both became Buddhas in heaven. So, a lot of this wasn't to waste, I guess you could say. Predecessor also said in his reunion scripture that each day we should reflect on ourselves and think about what we could have done better. And Predecessor and all of those who came before us really care about each of us. Even though we may not have met him or known him personally, they should always be in our thoughts because we're always in their thoughts. Predecessor would wake up in the middle of the night worrying about the Tao members, and he would burn the repentance form just to carry the bad karma for us. How often do we think about other people, let alone our own bad karmas that follow us? So we should always do our best to not let Predecessor and all those who came before us worry about us. Because, they did all of this for us, Why we're able to sit here today and why we can cultivate comfortably, I could say, is because of all these people who came before us. They paved the way for us. Without them, we wouldn't have the Tao here, and we wouldn't be able to have this golden thread and be here today. I have 20 minutes, but I don't think 20 minutes can really do justice for our predecessor, and I feel kind of almost embarrassed that 20 years of being in temple, and only now do I start to truly understand all the sacrifices they made for us. I think those were the highlighted points that I saw that I thought were really important. Of course, I encourage everyone to spend more time to kind of research the predecessor and all those who came before us for themselves, to really hear all the details and stories of the sacrifices they made. Are there any questions?
What's tomorrow?
Tomorrow? What do you mean?
Tomorrow is his
birthday. Yeah, so I think the topic today is because his birthday is tomorrow. So I think it was really good timing that I got to really understand more details about his story just in time for his birthday, and then we're going to celebrate it tomorrow. But yeah. Are there any questions or anything people want to add? I know that was really fast.
He was always very, I went to Taiwan and listened to transmitter Chen at Fusan, talked about his story. But he would always, because she used to learn under our predecessor, and so she, it's a period of time, and she was very young then, but, she would say that, he was never, he was always very virtuous, he was always very kind, he would never scold anyone, basically always take the blame himself, right, always, and so, during a class, just a few people, including transmitter Sun, and, and he would, have them each read a section of the scripture, and then she read a section of scripture, but she read one of the words wrong, and but he didn't say anything until after the class was over. He kind of mentioned just to her, "Oh, you should look up this word in the dictionary," and so she did, and so she realized, wow, he's so kind. He won't, even say anything in public in front of other people, to point out our mistake. So again, it's very virtuous and kind. Now I don't know if Kai remember. Not at all. Right? I mean I don't remember, but I guess we did meet in Taiwan when I was just a baby, I think. But yeah, because
Did you receive the Tao from him?
I don't know. I don't know.
Kai, did you receive the Tao from our
assume.
Oh.
Wow.
You should ask.
You met him?
Baby.
You still remember him?
Very little. I remember being at a temple. That was it, and still, and I saw it. That's it. That's not. But he doesn't say much.
Yeah, it's pretty quiet, I guess.
Even
But-
when he channels in,
Oh, he's very.
he's very soft-spoken and very gentle, not like a regular male.
Yeah.
Very soft-spoken, and he's so gentlemanly. The way he walks, the way he moves.
But actually, yeah, his every action is showing the Tao, is manifesting the Tao. But yeah, we had a reunion here in year 2000 before this was built. When basically, well, I know that I met him before because he said, "Oh, you remember me." So long ago, and he said, I mean, he referred to himself as like grandpa, to me back then, because I was just like a baby. But yeah, I mean, he's my impression, even though I don't really remember, but I feel like I'm very close to him. So.
Yeah, I didn't know much about him, like Kristen said she was before, but I actually knew more about him through lecture time because he has so much respect for him, for his being humble, for his being so sincere about the Tao. And I happened to also translate one of the videos about him, and that's how I got to know how virtuous he was and how he was so single-minded about the Tao. And once they were jailed and they were asked to reveal the three treasures, and some of the predecessors from other temple, they made up three treasures so as to reduce their torture. But us predecessor Liu refused to do that. He'd rather be tortured than make up three treasures. And I think really without the hardship they went through and also their determination, we wouldn't have such a good community, Tao community to learn and cultivate in.
I actually have the video that was written by Holy Teacher, I think, for him. Yeah, the song, and then there's like English on it. Yeah, so I thought maybe we could play it if we have time. Because I think, sometimes you hear these stories and you don't really get to relate to it as much as when you really look into it yourself. So I thought this song was very touching. Feel free to sing along if you like. Cannot go forward. No, okay. And this was the poem he wrote during his sandwriting reunion. Oh, you can't even read the English. Thank you. What's funny is that before I did my presentation or was preparing it, I didn't know his full title was like the true sage of great virtue. And so when I was doing my research on him and hearing these stories on him, my first thought was how virtuous he was, and then I realized that was his name, and I was like, well, he clearly, very much deserved it. So, to me, I thought it was very fitting. Thank you.